Okay, I'm going to call the June 23rd regular meeting of Glenwood Springs Planning and Zoning Commission to order. This meeting is also held via Zoom. People can dial in 719-359-4580 with webinar ID 863-8055-0264. Okay, let's do the roll call. And if I remember, we do this ourselves. Is that right then?
I think we're going to try. I'm going to turn on everyone's mic and then just call out your name.
Okay, sounds good. I think just call out your name.
Please call it. Kyle Jones. Patrick Corcoran.
Amy Connerton.
Pete Waller.
John Houghton.
Connie Guyman.
Okay, we have enough for quorum, so there you go. Are there any conflict of interest for tonight's agenda? For anyone? I don't know if they've followed up with Carl or. And you can turn your mics off now if you want. Okay, no conflicts of interest. Okay, the next is receipt of the minutes from May 26th. I need a motion. Commissioner Connerton,
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from May 26th.
could we have a motion to approve? Commissioner Connerton. Commissioner Jones.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any comments?
Turn your mic on.
Sorry. Any comments, any additions, deletions? Okay, then I'll call for the vote to approve the minutes from May 26th. Okay, it looks like they're passed unanimously, so the minutes are approved from May 26th as written. Okay, next, any comments from citizens appearing for items not on the agenda? Okay, seeing as none, I see we also have one person on Zoom. So for the person on Zoom too, if you have anything you need to say, raise your hand, and I'm assuming you familiar with doing that, so. Okay, now we'll move to new items. First item is appeal of 29-2026, 319 Park Drive, short-term rental. Okay, we'll start off with presentation from staff.
No, other way around, because this is an appeal.
Oh, because it's an appeal?
Yeah, the appellant.
Okay.
First.
So for the appeal, we go right to the applicant?
Yes. You folks can see you. See if hear you.
Ready? My name is Cindy Sabatos. I've lived in Glenwood Springs since 1978, and I've lived in our home on 319 Park Drive for 41 years. It is part of our retirement. It is located in South Park. It's one of the older neighborhoods by crossing Sarah Park. I think it's one of the last neighborhoods that's affordable for young families. We have several young families around us. Frequently, I count about 10 kids out on the sidewalks playing around the street with their parents. It's kind of the neighborhood that we all grew up in, a lot of us. The house across the street, when it was going up for sale, the seller happened to come across the street to talk to me and our neighbor, and said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, it's being sold just as a short-term rental and not a home. They plan on using it as a full-time short-term rental." I did immediately go in the house and file for a license for a short-term rental. I did not really plan on using it for a short-term rental. Nowhere in the application did it say I had to use to rent it out. And so anyway, I applied for the license. And I got a permit right away, but it was not done. I didn't know that for a while. In the, during that time, that was in April. And I did everything the application required. We put in new windows for the egress, cleaned out the downstairs egress so that they were no longer full of plants. And we put in so many CO2 smoke alarms that it's hard for me to cook. I'm not the best cook right now. The application was finalized October 22nd, 2025. And I knew that by December 31st, I was going to have to reapply, which I did in timely fashion, get all the paperwork in. And I filed my tax papers every single month with a zero amount. It says on the application, if it's a zero amount, just file it anyway. And I did. No one ever questioned that. I did that for 2.5 or 3 months. And then February 5th, I got a notice that I was denied my application because I had never rented it out and never paid taxes. I got it by February 5th. By that time, it was too late for me to even have charge someone who had come and spent the night for us and charge them and pay taxes on it. By then, it was too late. The deadline for January was over. And so as I looked into this, I found that there were 2 or 3 other people who were also turned down. They were turned down because they had never rented their houses out for 2 years. Apparently, they'd always filed zero. And they were given the opportunity and told that, well, if you hurry up and get somebody in there and rent it out and pay your taxes before the end of the year, you'll be good to go. I was never told that. I was not given that opportunity. During that time, it had this plaque. It's not a police one. It's from my surgeon trying to fix my foot. I had a serious fracture of my heel 3 years ago, and we're still dealing with it. This does not allow me to get around very much. I can't even go to my basement. I cannot easily go onto my back porch. I can't easily do anything. And I counted it up last night. Since last July, I've had 15 surgeries. Which does not make it really easy to have guests in your house. Friday, it'll be my 16th surgery. And hopefully this will come off. So there's, in case anyone's wondering what this contraption is. It's so the ordinance states simply that all taxes must be paid to renew. Doesn't say anywhere that I had to have people in there. And now the house across the street, that's it. They want it to be a year-round short-term rental. We're in a nice little neighborhood. We're not set up for almost hotel status. It's just not right. We have so few places that are still a good neighborhood that why would we have a short-term rental when you don't you don't know who the people are who are staying there. You don't know when the turnover is. You just know that there's gonna be a lot of cars. It sleeps, I think, 12 people. And they have a backyard that's perfect for entertaining. Absolutely perfect. We've been at that house being entertained many times over the 40 years. You know, when you have little kids like that one, and you want her to play outside in front and come back and forth between my house and their house and whatnot, you don't know what they're doing across the street. If there's going to be a party later on, and the kids next door, it feels unsafe. And so seems like I should have a lot more to say. But I just don't think that our neighborhoods and anywhere in Glenwood should be, I think that there needs to be a cap on these short-term rentals. There's no place for people to live that's affordable right now. There's no, I mean, you look at any other town, Leadville has Breckenridge, none of these towns, Aspen. There's no place to live because so many of them are just short-term rental. I've been trying to find a place for my friend to live in Venice Beach, California. There's 1,000 rentals, as long as you just want to stay a couple nights. What else do I want to say? I noticed on the agenda for tonight that you're going to be addressing this problem. That where it doesn't say you have to rent it out for at least a night, 1 night in 2 years. That's, you know, it doesn't say that. But tonight you're going to be reviewing a permit holder who fails to utilize and collect more than $0 lodging taxes on a short-term rental during the permit period shall not be permitted to renew the permit for the next 2-year cycle. Now, if you're having to change that, that must mean it's the previous one that's in, must be wrong right now. Otherwise, you wouldn't be needing to amend it. At least that's how I certainly think is being written. And if that's the way it's going to be, I will gladly rent out my place once in a while. I'll probably still be there because it's just like, as you know, it's hard for me to get around, but I know people who travel. I know I'll rent it out if that's what we need to do. So, anything else?
Sure.
One thing we'll have on the process, so let me make sure I understand the process before you come up. Because this is a little different than our normal process. So our process is the applicant presents, we have questions for the applicants, and then we go through and have a presentation by staff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
so
then,
it's just-
and then after that, then we open it for public comment.
I think my question would be is whether or not Sherry is appearing on behalf or just as a member of the public.
Oh,
If you're appearing on behalf, then I think it's appropriate to have Ms. Cloya address you now as the attorney for the applicant.
For the applicant, okay, good.
Good evening. My name is Sherry Kaloya. I am a good friend of Cindy and Tony Savatos. I also happen to be an attorney, so I've been assisting them with this whole process. The ordinance, when she was denied for the renewal in February, I took a close look at the ordinance that is on the books, and it's been on the books, I believe, since 2013. And it says that you cannot get a renewal unless you've paid all the taxes. To me, that's very clear. It says you have to keep track of all your rentals. You have to provide an accounting to the city and pay your tax. If you've not rented it, you're not going to have any tax. Nowhere in the ordinance does it say, and you have to rent it out at least once or at least twice. It doesn't say that. I can't interpret it that way. I could not understand the reasoning, and we dug further into this and talked to the city, and the city clarified that yes, they believe the ordinance says you have to rent it out. Because otherwise Cindy has complied with every requirement of the permit and now the renewal. And so I see on your agenda next is the consideration of amendment to the code. And that amendment would make it clear that you have to rent it out. And I've said to Cindy and Tony, well, if they want to amend their ordinance, they can. That's fine. And if they do, then you'll have to rent it out to get your renewal the next time. But I just don't think it's fair to say, well, we're going to interpret the ordinance this way, which is not a clear interpretation of it, because it doesn't say that. And nowhere, nobody said this to Cindy before the end of the year. In addition, Cindy is asking that she be an exception if you want to find that the ordinance did make it clear that you had to rent it. Cindy was laid up. I mean, Cindy's been laid up. I've been carting her around. We've been wheeling her around for months and months. It wasn't possible for her to rent it out in the 2 months and 10 days, 9 days that were left in the year after she got the permit. And so if you don't want to find the ordinance meant what it said, and that staff's interpretation is correct, well, then we ask for an exception because of the exceptional circumstances that Cindy and Tony have here. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Do you, Cindy, do you have any other things you want to say as the applicant or Sherry? And here, and so we have the process go. So then we'll open it up for questions from our group to, we have some. So are you good, Cindy? Okay. So now we'll open it up to the commission. Questions? Okay. Commissioner Guyman.
Hi, Cindy.
Hi.
I want to stick to the ordinance and the code and not get into thoughts and beliefs about whether short-term rentals are good or bad, because that's not something that we really have a lot of. We might all vary in opinions, but it doesn't matter. It's just opinions, right? So we want to stick with the facts. And I have read the ordinance, and I think we'll talk to the city staff about that. But there was an email in the packet where it was on December 9th. And you and Emery were writing back and forth. And you said, I've not rented out as I've had multiple surgeries. What am I missing? And he said, to clarify, a requirement of renewing the permit is that you have rented and have remitted some amount of sales tax to the city. So I guess my question is, do you think that counts as letting you know that you have to rent it out? Because it seems that sentence seems clear to me.
Apparently not.
Yeah.
But still, because, I still, if you haven't rented it out, I have nothing to pay. So I just I can't interpret it any differently,
Okay.
so.
And my other question is, now that you know in a 2-year period that you have to rent out the house, if you were to win the appeal and get the permit, hypothetically, would you then rent your house out in the next 2 years?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Guyman. Other questions from the commission? Commissioner Connerton.
Thank you for that explanation. I appreciate it. I just had a couple questions, just on the timeline for your medical problem, if that's okay. You know, there is some medical hardship. You had surgery and you said that that happened close to the time that the permit was going to expire. Is that?
No, this actually started 3 years ago. And I've had multiple surgeries up in Aspen. They finally sent me to CU Health. And in July, I started having surgeries. Had 2 in July. I'm gonna try and make this short because everyone always asks me what in the hell I did. They took out all the hardware. 2 weeks later, he rebuilt my heel. And I did fine. I still had a couple surgeries during that time, so he could go in and make sure that pins were clean. I had been non-weight bearing forever during this time on one of those little kneeler things that kill you. Anyway, they went to change my splint out for a cast, and my heel had dehisced. It had kind of exploded open. The skin had just given way. So then we started another process of having multiple surgeries. I faced heavy amputation in December, and that just wasn't going to work for me. And so I kept having surgeries. I went to the wound clinic every week. Then he came up with this procedure. It allowed me to stand up without putting any weight on my heel. And it's a complicated procedure, and I've had this on since March 17th. And this Friday cannot come soon enough. And we don't know how long, if it's going to work, how long it's going to work. I still will not wait. That's 15 surgeries since July.
That's pretty significant. I have just one more follow-up to something that Commissioner Guyman had asked you. And it was when you were initially presenting to us, you said that when the people across the street came up to you and told you what their intent was, that you filed right away, but you also said that you never had intention to ever rent your house. And so I just wanted to follow up with what Commissioner Guyman had asked you. So,
Well, at that time, my husband even looked it up somewhere along the line and it said, no, you do not have to actually rent it out. I just wanted to get an application in the process. I wasn't sure I was going to get it. I just put it in there. And yes, there was a glitch in the program that you guys had just installed. So I came down to City Hall and they walked me through it, and we got it put through with one of the staff. They helped me do it. And the new buyers of the house couldn't file or come in and put in for a permit because they weren't closing until that Tuesday or Wednesday, I forget. So they couldn't put in for a permit. And I could. One of the owners actually came over, I think that Friday or Monday or something, in tears and said, why did you do this? This is my retirement plan. And I said, well, that's the stupidest thing I've heard. Buy a house that expensive and want to rent it out every night. But that's kind of how I come about things. And she said, why did you do this just to block us? And I couldn't think of anything else to say. So I said, oh yeah, I did. And this is my retirement home too. This is part of my plan. So then it began.
Okay.
And I did everything that was asked of us to have people staying with us. We put a lot of money into having new windows put in, and so and paying all the fees. It hasn't been cheap. And I paid all the money to have, excuse me, to go on for another 2 years. So it wasn't something that I was just doing flippantly. I was committed to it. And if someone would have come and said, you do have to rent it out, I would have. But no one ever said that.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Cindy, so I have a question. So staff, feels like through the emails that Commissioner Guyman talked about that it was clear on, I don't know, that you needed to rent it out. And I mean, that's one of the reasons we're here, to go through that. And so did you have any, other than the emails, were there any other conversations that you had with Emery or staff on here's what it is, or is it pretty much email
It was
conversation that happened between you and staff?
pretty much email. And I still can't figure out what, if they were seeing, because I got a nice notice from them every month saying, make sure you file your taxes. And it's like, so I did. And it seems like after the first time they would have said, did you not rent it out? You have to rent it out. So I would have, but if you're filing 0 and they know that you're filing 0, why aren't they asking me? Why are you filing 0? You have to have guests. Now, I still can't, I don't know if I'd have been able to have guests in my house from that time, from October through December. I was going through a pretty rough time. So, I mean, maybe I could have gotten somebody, but I couldn't even think that clearly of what I was going to do. And that also makes me wonder why these other people went 2 years without filing. They must have filed something that were 0s, because neither one of these women knew that they had to have people in their house, actually. So, and if they were told, just rent it out at least once before the end of the year.
Okay. Commissioner Guyman.
How do you know about these other 2 people who didn't rent it out? Is there a core request or?
Mhm.
Yeah, there's a core
I
request.
just asked, I asked to
Did
see
we-
if there
Did
was
we get that documentation at all about what was in the core request?
I don't think there was actually a core request. I think we just provided that information, if I remember correctly. Is that right, Emery? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, step up. Yeah.
Can we have access to that information?
So yes, there was a core request in the applicant. It wasn't included in the staff report. So
Okay.
they're basically, stating similar to the December 9th email of not being eligible to renew and instructions for what they would need to do to be eligible.
It was just other instances where a similar situation occurred that we had provided that information on behalf of those applications to Cindy.
And when the city staff does their report, we can ask them questions about what those emails look like. Okay.
And there were 2, they were very short. The third one was actually in not submitting all the documentation. So I believe in the last couple of years, there were only 2. And they did not contest the denial of the renewal.
So Sherry, and I'll ask you, because you're probably more knowledgeable of this, but so how did the core request go back to when to the 2013 or whenever this went in, or what was the timing of the core request? Do you know?
I don't know. I think it was fairly general, just asking for permit renewal denial.
Okay, so we can ask staff.
Yeah.
see more about that.
Steve Boyd told me that. I
Okay,
think Steve is the one who told me that there had been other denials.
Right, and then you made the core request to
Yeah.
get those documents.
okay, thank you. Any other questions? Cindy, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And
Thank you.
thank you very much, Sherry. Okay, now we have a,
I like to say something.
are you part of the applicant,
Husband.
He is-
husband? Well, then I think I think, okay, come on up. Sure.
I'm not the best walker either, so.
And could
This
you,
is,
and could you state your name and all that?
Tony Swaps.
What was that?
My name is Tony Swaps.
Okay, and
Oh, what am I doing?
let's pull the mic. Trent, maybe you could kind of help him get the mic up there.
Okay. I've been going in and out of this with Cindy for the longest time. She's been the key player in this whole thing, but I've been trying to help her. Every once in a while, I'd say, Cindy, what's going on? And I'd start reading things about what was going on. But during the permitting list, she was trying to fill out the permit and she was having trouble. And I said, I'm just going to run down to City Hall and get a hard copy of the permit. So I ran down there and I believe Emery was there. And he said, we don't have hard copies, but I could give you something else. I forget what he did, but I wanted a hard copy because I wanted to see about this frequency of rental, because we had checked the ordinance and Sherry had checked it. I had read it. And also it was kind of interesting because I started to use chat and I asked chat, go and find, is there anything in Glenwood's ordinance about this? And it said, no, there's nothing about frequency. So I have to tell you, later on, I checked again and it said something about it's kind of understood or something, but it's not written in the ordinance. So I guess my point is everything was leading for us to believe that you didn't have to rent it out. I mean, as silly as it sounds, that at that point, I did not even know that there was just this 2.5 months before we had to renew it again. And we're just merrily going along, at least I am. And Cindy said, no, I did all the paperwork. I submitted the renewal for the next year. And that's when she got turned down. But and I guess what I left out, the most important point and why I stepped up here, because I remember Emery saying to me, because I thought, I'm just going to check with Emery now. Is there any frequency in renting this out? And he said, no, there's no frequency. So that's all I want to say. Do you have any questions for me?
Any questions for Mr. Svatos? Okay, thanks, Tony. Okay, Emery.
Sure. So I'll be sharing my screen. This will be a very brief presentation on the appeal. Okay, so again, this is an appeal application. So there's really only one action item, which is the consideration of the appeal for the administrative decision regarding section 70-30-30 E9F6 and how staff interpreted that. There is no staff recommendation. So this is a decision that Planning and Zoning Commission will review. And again, that would include the necessary facts to warrant the appeal. So basically all the information's been included in the staff report. I'm happy to clarify any additional questions on that information. Again, so this is the exact code language, which we've been talking about, how it is and how the ordinance reads now. So again, the appeal process. So just a little bit of background. So when you have an administrative decision, it can be appealed to Planning and Zoning Commission. A Planning and Zoning Commission can be appealed to City Council decision. So basically just goes up. So that's why we're here today. And then, so the Planning and Zoning Commission, you may affirm the decision, reverse to the decision in whole or in part, or you may modify the order requirement decision or determination appeal. And then you may also attach conditions on any sort of approval of an appeal. So again, these are per code, what the commission shall consider is the facts in the application as presented by the applicant, the requirements and intent of the standards, evidence related to how the standards from this code may have been interpreted and administered in the past, and consistency with the comprehensive plan. So those are what we're looking at for criteria. So that concludes the presentation.
Okay. So questions for staff? Okay. Commissioner Connerton.
Thanks, Emery. So, how many short-term rentals are out there? in town?
Currently, there are 119 active rentals. Short-term
And
rentals.
how many, who there's been similar situations have been denied?
Denied for a renewal such as this one. This past year, there were 3. Past permit period, there were 3.
Okay. Yeah, I don't want to take up everybody's.
No, okay.
I go that way. I'm good for now.
Commissioner Corcoran.
Do we know what the maximum amount of permits we could issue within the city limits? Is there an estimate on that?
It is about 213. I'd have to double check. So the maximum amount, and I would differentiate. So we have 2 types of permits. There's a short-term rental permit, which allows you to rent the entire house, and that is limited. Basically, you can't have 2 of those within 250 feet of each other. And so the cap on that is about 213 permits, and that's citywide. Now, that being said, as you place those permits around town and each house has its 250 feet, I don't know if physically Glenwood Springs could actually have that many, but that is an established cap. And then the accessory tourist rental permits, which that allows you to rent 1 bedroom in a home with a maximum of 2 guests. It just requires that you be there as the owner occupied. There is no cap to those permits, and that permit does not have any distance limitation on it. So you could have those next to each other.
Thank you.
I have one just quick follow-up question on that, just consistent with what Patrick asked. So what percentage is that of housing units for Glenwood?
So there's, let's see, 119 permits, and there's about 4,300 housing units in Glenwood. So math.
And that original cap was set on what percentage, Emery, for the
Uh,
maximum?
So the original cap is 5% of total housing units.
So the cap-
Pre-market housing units citywide, I should add.
So this would be
2.5.
2.5 to 3%. Okay. Commissioner Guyman.
I want to follow up with what some stuff that Commissioner Connerton was talking about in number 3 in the appeal review, evidence related to how the applicable standards from the code had been administered in the past. So I am interested in this Cora request and what the emails to, did those other people, did they appeal or do they not have their permit anymore?
No, of the 3, 1 person decided they didn't want to renew. Another person also didn't renew theirs. And then also a 3rd person, what they did is they decided they didn't want to rent the whole house. So they let that one lapse. And then recently they resubmitted for an accessory tourist rental for just one bedroom in the house.
So none of those 3 people decided to get another permit.
2 people decided to just not do vacation rentals anymore. And then that 3rd person basically went to do the other permit where it's
Okay.
just limited. So.
And I have one other question about the code. Can you go back to the ordinance or the code? It says that they cannot permitted to renew the permit for the next 2-year permit cycle. What if hypothetically, I'm really fascinated by how they chose to just have everybody finish at the exact same time at the end of an odd year. I think that puts some people at a disadvantage, because like they don't have that much time. Even if you were well, that wouldn't give you enough time to rent. What if you were to get your permit on like December 28th? You have 2 days to rent it, otherwise you would revoke the permit?
That's correct.
There's no like, um,
Yeah. So part of that is when you submit for a short-term rental permit, you pay your fee, you submit your application, and then essentially what you've done is you have submitted it and nobody else within 250 feet of you can now submit for a permit. So if you have decided to submit a permit on December 25th, you are choosing, you have 6 days left in that permit period to comply with everything to renew. You could also choose to wait to submit that application until January 1st, which is certainly within your right, but also someone else could submit a permit before you and then make you ineligible. So it keeps everything on a level playing field by having an equal 2-year permit period where at anybody at any point will have the same expiration date for a permit, and all permits are renewed on the same schedule. So it keeps it level.
Commissioner Guyman, just to let you know, I did forward you all a link to where the core request documents are available on the city website.
Commissioner Houghton.
At the end of the 2-year cycle, is it like the clock strikes midnight and it's a scramble for permits? Is it open season, or is preference given to permit holders?
Oh, so the way the permit schedule works is it starts September 1st. So for example, this past permit cycle, the renewal period started September 1st, and those people have until the end of the year to complete the renewal process, which consists of submitting the application, paying the application fee, passing on their building inspection, and then showing proof of accommodation taxes being remitted to the city.
So preferences or priority perhaps is the right word, is given to active permit holders.
Correct. Yes.
Thank you.
Other questions for Emery? Commissioner Guyman.
can the permit get conveyed to the next owner when you sell your house?
No, it cannot. All permits expire with the sale of a home.
Okay.
Okay. Commissioner Connerton.
One more. So how many situations do you get like this where people are, it's jockeying for position because they're within 250 feet?
Well, the thing is if you are within 250 feet of an existing permit, you just can't apply. There's no waiting list or anything. You would just be ineligible, and we would not accept an application.
So there's really no way of knowing that one, right? Because they don't, the application would just not go
It
through.
wouldn't be accepted, correct?
I see.
Yeah. So if someone came in and their neighbor had already had a short-term rental permit and they submitted a permit, it would be denied. It wouldn't be allowed to apply.
250 feet of.
Wait a second. Commissioner Corcoran.
Is that 250 feet of property line or the actual building? or-
250 feet of the property line.
Commissioner Guyman.
I am reading I'm only on the first email, and it does say to one of the applicants that they you do suggest to rent it out.
Correct, because if they did not rent it, they would not have remitted any accommodation taxes and they would be ineligible to renew.
Did you use similar wording with this applicant?
Probably not the exact verbatim words, no, but the intent was there.
I was gonna say, I think if you read, it's in your packet, you can compare the language to each other.
Could you put up I mean, I know it's in our packet. Be good for everyone to just see the email exchange and Cindy had gone through that before as well.
So this would be one of the conversations.
Could you make it a little bit bigger for old eyes like mine?
Yeah.
Would you like to start at the start of the conversation?
I think it's right there. Go up a little bit. The one I'm talking about is Number one, have us stay at the end of the year and remit the accommodation taxes as part of a fourth quarter remittance. So you're recommending they have somebody stay with them so they can have, but I don't see that in this email exchange.
So I believe the December 9th email is pretty similar intent of instructing someone to have a rental.
It's two
I
others.
think it was the one that you read out loud, Commissioner
Yeah.
Diamond.
Could you do the specific email that kind of says they need to rent it out?
I think just to save a little bit of time here, if you look on page 6 of the attachments in the packet, it is a Tuesday, December 9th, 2025 email at 3:07 p.m. from Emery to Cindy. And it's the language that was read by Councilor Guyman earlier that states, to clarify, the requirement of renewing the permit is that you have rented and have remitted some amount of sales tax to the city. This is where you would use Muni Revs to report your sales and accommodation taxes. If you have not done that yet, that is something you need to do to renew.
And that email was December 9th.
Was December 9th at 3:07 p.m. Yes. So,
Okay. So is that, I know I'm kind of hopping in here, but so is that the written communication that was very specific?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Connerton.
No,
Mhm.
whoops. Sorry, I never shut myself off. Oh,
Other questions? Let me see if I've got mine answered. So, and this is a repeat question, but could you just put the ordinance up again? I guess what I'm trying to get at is I just want to know the communication, specific communication thing. Here's what that is. And then while you're doing it, I mean, were there, is what you're showing us, is that all of that's all the written communication that was there between getting a copy of the ordinance and then the email chain?
That's all of the communication that there was.
Okay. Thank you.
As far as sending a copy of the ordinance, that was.
So here's the,
Well, I want to clarify that just a little bit. This is a process that we go through on a biannual basis that is very involved. There are numerous emails and communications that go out to permit holders and permit renewals. So the process, there's a lot of communication from our department to these applicants. So while it might not be specific to this part of the standard here, there's much communication that occurs from our office. In regards to this specific case, I asked on numerous occasions that Emory take extreme caution in trying to make sure that the message was relayed to Ms. Savatos throughout the process, because we knew that there was an adjacent property owner that was interested in a short-term rental permit. Regardless of how we feel about short-term rentals or not, there was a viable applicant who had submitted the proper information in order to get their own. So we were trying to be very careful throughout this process and how we managed this, and making sure that we were communicating to all parties involved about the process, its requirements, and how we would review these applications.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so so here's a question. So when it says collect lodging taxes, so Cindy put in 0 for 3 months. Is that,
So those are the reports for the taxes, but nothing was collected.
oh, to collect? So collect means
Correct.
that there's not a 0, that there's some. Okay. Any other questions? Emery? Okay, thanks. Thanks, Emery. Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Connaughton.
So the code language is mandatory.
That's correct. Yes.
The code language is mandatory. So what's in the code is, you know, it's what they follow for everyone and every applicant. The point.
Okay. Going once, going twice. Okay, thanks, Emery. Okay, now we open it to the public for comments, input, and I think what we have, so you have a 3-minute time period, and there'll be a little countdown doodad thing up here, and so come up and state your name.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is James McGuire, and I'm one of the owners at 322 Park Drive. I'm asking the commission to uphold city staff's decision to revoke the short-term rental permit at 319 Park Drive and allow our application at 322 Park Drive to proceed. The central issue is simple. 319 Park Drive was never intended to be used as a short-term rental. The owners still live in the house. They never listed it for rent. They never rented it. They never collected or remitted lodging or accommodations tax. And based on what they have told multiple people, including one of our partners, their reason for getting the permit was not to operate a lawful STR. It was to block us. That is not what the city's STR program is for. The city's own STR requirements make clear that renewal requires proof of collecting more than $0 in accommodation and sales tax during the permit period. That requirement exists for a reason. It shows that these permits are intended for active operating rentals that comply with inspections, licensing, tax collection, and neighborhood impact rules, not inactive permits held by people who continue living in the home and never actually enter the regulated rental system. My partners and I acted in good faith. Before purchasing 322 Park Drive for over $1 million, we checked the city's STR map, contacted city staff, and confirmed the property appeared eligible. We bought the property specifically to operate a lawful, compliant short-term rental. We also already own and operate 3 other STRs in Glenwood Springs. We know the rules, we follow the rules, we pay the taxes, and we contribute to city's lodging revenue. We are not trying to avoid the system, we are trying to participate in it properly. After we applied, city staff reviewed the facts and determined that the 319 Park Drive permit should be revoked. I believe that was the correct decision. If a permit can be obtained with no genuine intent to rent, no actual operation, no lodging tax, and no participation in the regulated STR system, then the permit process can be used as a weapon against neighboring property owners. That undermines the purpose and integrity of the ordinance. This is not about special treatment. It's about consistent enforcement. 319 Park Drive did not operate as an STR. It was used to block a compliant applicant. 322 Park Drive is prepared to operate lawfully, meet city requirements, and contribute tax revenue like our other properties already do. For those reasons, I respectfully ask you to uphold city staff's revocation of the permit at 319 Park Drive and allow our application at 322 Park Drive to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other comments?
Good evening, Commissioners. My name's John Lipp, also an owner of 322 Park Drive. I'm here tonight to ask you to uphold the city administration's decisions to revoke the short-term rental permit at 319 Park Drive, allowing our lawful application to proceed. While my business partner, James, has detailed our specific timeline, I want to focus on a fundamental principle of fair governance, its consistency and precedent. In any regulatory framework, identical situations demand identical outcomes. The city of Glenwood Springs has established a clear, unambiguous administrative precedent regarding short-term rental permits that fail to operate or generate lodging tax. The city's own official records from just 6 months ago show 3 separate identical cases handled by the planning department. 400 Pinion Street in December 30th, 2025, the permit holder reported 0 earnings. City staff explicitly stated that because no accommodation tax was paid, the property was ineligible to renew, and the permit was removed from the STR map. 1071 Park West, January 12, 2026. The city officially issued a non-renewal notice and terminated the permit specifically for failing to submit proof of accommodation taxes remitted to the city. 1640 Lincolnwood Drive, December 15th, 2025. City staff explicitly told the owner, quote, "It is a condition of the renewal to have rented it and remitted accommodation tax. If that is the case, that you would not be able to renew the license." The permit was subsequently canceled. In every single instance, the city's enforcement was consistent. If a permit holder remits $0 in lodging tax, they lose the permit. The neighbor at 319 Park Drive did not just have a slow year. They never listed the property, never generated revenue, and explicitly remitted $0. The permit was used exclusively as a placeholder to block a neighboring property, which completely contradicts the ordinance's intent to generate city revenue and regulate active tourism. Overturning the staff's decision tonight would create an irregular, unfair exception. It would signal to the community that the rules enforced in Pinion Street, Park West, and Lincolnwood Drive do not apply on Park Drive. The city administration applied the rules correctly, fairly, and in perfect alignment with established precedent. When they revoked the permit at 319 Park Drive, we respectfully ask this commission to uphold the staff's decision and allow our application to move forward. Thank you. And I just want to say, just give us a chance, guys. We run over.
Okay, let's sit down. Thanks for your input,
Thank
John. Okay, please step forward and state your name.
Hi, my name is Morgan Walker. I live at 323 Park Drive, next door to the Savatos and across from the owners at 322 Park Drive or their residents. I wanted to share the language from the city of Aspen's short-term rental guidelines in contrast to the language we were reviewing earlier. It states, properties with short-term rental permits must be occupied by a short-term renter a minimum of once per year as shown in tax filings to be eligible for annual renewal. That language is extremely clear. It doesn't get caught up in the distinction between whether remitting taxes is still valid if you're remitting $0, but still filing your forms. Also only requires renting once a year. And I bring this up because, you know, I'm not an attorney, neither is Cindy. And I think the ambiguity in the language in the Glenwood rules and regs privileges people like the owners of 322 Park Drive who have attorneys working for them who are sort of old hands at running these types of properties, and disadvantages ordinary homeowners who may also want to take advantage of this program. I will say also just a little bit of context unrelated around the timing of this. I was sitting with Cindy on my porch when we found out from the previous homeowner that the buyers were intending to operate a short-term rental. This was about 5 days before they closed, and I believe the reason he shared that information with us is that it wasn't his intention to sell his property to a group of investors. He believed that he was selling to a man and his wife who live in the town of Glenwood Springs and have kids, which one of these men is. So I think that he shared that information with us with the intention of giving us a moment to see if there was anything we could do to prevent that situation from arising if we wanted to. I don't know if that's material to your judgment at all, but the timing here is funny. Of course, they checked to see if there was a permit when they, made their offer, and of course there wasn't. And the reason that Cindy was able to put an application in was because of the specific action of that homeowner. And for what it's worth, my husband and I would have done the exact same thing if she hadn't done it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Morgan. Other comments? Please step forward and state your name.
Good evening. My name is Oliver Obermeyer. I also live at 323 Park Drive. I'd like to just challenge the language on the face of it. I don't interpret that as saying that a rental has to occur in the ordinance as it's written. To me, that without a period and two separate sentences means there needs to be tax remitted on the transaction. If no transaction occurred, it's not clear to me that any consequence of that should result in a permit being failed to be renewed. I think consistent use of a period and separating the sentences would have avoided this situation and saved a lot of time and frustration and made it clear for all parties what the rules were. So in terms of the interpretation of that and how the city's handled its communications with individuals, I do appreciate your comment that there was a lot of work and effort into making sure that that's consistent. But the language itself needs to be clear. And I think my wife's comment about Aspen having achieved that is valid. So on that point, I think we really need to consider whether or not the ambiguity there is significant and material to this appeals outcome. Secondly, I'd really like to ask the city to be consistent about allowing a period for cure to clarify and provide an opportunity for people to clearly state their intent and to carry out actions in line with that. So if you are unclear of somebody's intent, giving them a very delineated opportunity to bring their unconformity in line with regulations, I don't believe that that opportunity has been presented to this applicant's appeal. And I would urge the council to give some individual consideration, not because we live in a better part of town than anybody else, but because that's the right thing to do when somebody has made every other effort to be in line with the regulations, and their intent clearly was to renew the permit. Lastly, I'd like to also speak to, as somebody with some mobility issues myself, Cindy's really had a lot thrown at her, and she has shouldered that really well. I would also urge that there be some eligibility with application for somebody to make an appeal for some delay in the deadlines for filing these things, even retroactively for medical purposes, or for even delaying the period in which they have to rent out their rental before they lose their permit because of health issues. So those are my 3 comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Other comments from citizens?
I could do it now or. if you're giving me
Typically, if public comment is over, the applicant, or in this case, the appellant, can
Okay.
provide some rebuttal.
So sure, let's hold and just see if there are other comments. Other comments from. Ms. Stillman, do you have any? Your hand is not raised. Your hand is now raised. Okay, do you have your election, you ready to go, Carly?
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh. Yep, can you hear me? Hi, guys. My name's
Yes.
Carly Stillman. I'm a longtime local. I actually grew up in Glenwood Springs, and my husband and I live here. We have a couple kids here, so we're not a big investment firm with a ton of attorneys. I just want to put that out there. We do have multiple short-term rentals, and we see the emails that come back and forth all year long from Emory and Trent. And I do feel like they're very clear, and it's your responsibility as a STR holder to read those laws and know those bylaws. So I feel like it's been clear to the 200 plus STR permit holders in the city that this is what the rules are, this is what the regulations are. I don't know why we're discussing how it's unclear to one specific person. That's kind of my opinion on it. So I've talked to Cindy. There's no intent. I went and discussed everything with her. She told me she has no intention to rent this whatsoever. It was solely as a placeholder to block us. And she did not want to hear my explanations at all. So it was a bit frustrating, but at the end of the day, the facts are the facts, and she didn't remit taxes. We gave her over a year and a half to do this. And so we applied in April of last year. So it's been 14 months, 15 months that we've been dealing with this. So I feel like it's pretty clear, but I just wanted to put that out there as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Carly. Other comments from the public? Okay, Sherry.
I appreciate the comments and the perspectives of other people. And I do admit that the December 9th email is there. I can't argue with it. And Cindy missed it. 2 words, have rented. But it doesn't matter, because if the code doesn't support it, it doesn't matter what staff says. It matters what the code says. The code language is controlling. And the code language is very clear. You remit your taxes. The purpose of that obviously was you can't keep your permit if you don't pay your taxes. It doesn't say you have to rent it. If you give somebody a business license or a permit to sell, you don't say, and you have to sell those widgets, or else you're not going to be able to keep that permit. It doesn't say that. That's not something that's logical. And so the code language here is what it is. That was what was written. And regardless of whether the city told people they couldn't renew in the past, and there's only a few of them, they didn't appeal it. They didn't complain. It doesn't mean, well, because we did it to them, we have to do it to you. That's not the law. As far as the blocking us, I get it, but if you apply, you block them. If they apply, they block you. It's a mutual thing here that just is the way the city wrote the ordinance. And we're here, we're complying with the ordinance. Cindy and the neighbors wanted local control over their neighborhood. I can't blame them for that. I thought it was a great idea for them to do that. It gives them the local control that they wanted. Now, if Cindy has to rent it out a few times to comply with the new code, fine, she either does that or she doesn't get a renewal. Just because staff said this is what I think it means isn't what it means. And staff interpretation is one fact you guys have to consider. It is not controlling. And I believe staff was wrong on this one. And so we are asking that the permit renewal denial be overturned and that it be issued. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Caloya. Okay, so that was the applicant's rebuttal. So the public hearing is now closed. So now how the process goes, this comes back to the commission for a commissioner to make a motion on the applications so we can have conversation.
You know, extremely pathetic. Thank you so much for everybody being so thorough. I moved to affirm the administrative decision to deny renewal of a short-term rental permit for failure to collect lodging taxes per section 070-030-030 E9F6 finding. The facts stated in the application as presented by the applicant. The facts are undisputed. The requirements and intent of the applicable standards from this code compared to the decision that is being appealed. And just to say once before, but and evidence related to how the applicable standards from this code have been administered and interpreted in the past, and also consistency with the comprehensive plan.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Connerton. Commissioner Houghton. Commissioner
I'll
Houghton.
second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, so now let's have conversation. Commissioner Houghton.
I mean, I think ultimately today it boils down to whether lodging tax was collected. That's the language in the code. A permit holder who fails to collect lodging taxes on a short-term rental during the permit period shall not be permitted to renew the permit. To me, it's not, did he remit taxes? It's were lodging taxes collected. And to me, that implies that you can't collect zero taxes.
Okay. Commissioner Connerton.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, Commissioner Houghton. I also, like the intent of the STR and aligns to me in my mind with the code as it's written. I also feel like it's important for us to apply a lot of these rules consistently, with some integrity and fairness, especially with people who have been denied. It just seems like the code was applied correctly in this instance. And yeah, that's what I have to say. I mean, I know this is really hard. I do hope that, you guys are neighbors. So it's a small town.
Okay. Commissioner Guyman.
I really, it feels like there's a lot of emotion, a lot of money involved in this. And I don't want to talk about whether I believe you should have short-term rentals or not. We have short-term rentals in our neighborhood and we have good experiences with them. So I'm not anti short-term rental, but I personally read that code and I don't see where it says that you have to prove that you have more than $0. I think it's pretty vague. I don't think it really states. I'm going to agree with Cindy, and I don't think it says you have to collect taxes, but if you don't rent it out, then you're not going to collect taxes. And one of my evidence for that is that the very next thing we're going to talk about is clarifying it, because it's so vague. And, she had it for 2.5 months. And I don't think that her email that she got was similar to the other emails where it says, hurry up, get somebody in there so that you can rent it out so that you can have the permit. I think she should have a chance for 2 years to rent it out. And I don't think she had that chance in that language. I don't agree with Commissioner Houghton saying that if you don't rent it out, you're not going to make any taxes.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Guyman. Commissioner Connerton.
I mean, I totally hear you. However, it's to pay a tax, you have to make a tax, right? Or you have to provide a service of some sort. And so to me, like 0 is 0. It means you're doing nothing. But I mean, I know this is hard and it's not fully, it doesn't say you need to rent it out, but I do feel like several of the emails indicated that's something that was needed to be done. And, regardless of, I mean, it is a short-term rental and you'd assume that you would have to rent because short-term rental has the word rent in it. But I mean, I kind of feel like maybe it's not going to ever be rented out because the applicant did state that sitting here that she had no intention of ever renting out her house.
She actually said that
Commissioner Guyman.
she did say she would rent it out.
Oh,
I asked her that very
Mhm,
question. I said, if you got the permit, would you rent it out? And she said that she would rent her house out. I also feel like this is a city problem. I feel like the city created a vague
yeah.
ordinance and did not enforce it in a way that was understandable. And I feel like the city needs to make it right to this, like to the citizens. I do feel really bad that another investor's family, whatever, bought the house across the street. But it is true that we created this where people are going to fight over permits because only one is every 250 feet. And so we created this situation. I don't know if there's a way to make it right, but I do feel like this was not whatever Cindy decided to do for her own, like to block them. She now says she's going to rent it out. And I think it's so vague that we're about to discuss how we can make it less vague.
I guess I was just going to ask for people to I feel. I would love to hear you tie your comments to the criteria that you're making the decision on. I know it's an emotional issue, but from a record standpoint, I would appreciate that.
Okay.
I think my point was that I do feel for both of them equally, but objectively, I don't think that. I think it's very vague.
Other questions? Okay, for me, I think it's I guess, well, one question I have for the city staff is so I heard a date that STR went into effect 2013. I mean, when did this code go into effect?
Historically, the code has had a number of iterations. I'm trying to think, it was probably 2015-ish when the 250-foot rule went into effect. 2015, I think that's about right. It was not the first round, but
Right, and that was in Emory's staff. It was in the staff.
Yeah, and this information is included in the staff report for the next item as well. And the 250-foot buffer was established in 2019.
2019. So the code that you went through that we reviewed, was that 2009? Was that the last time the code was revised?
No, so there have been some minor alterations to short-term rentals. Again, we'll get to that in the next item. That was the last major overhaul though, because that established, for example, prior to 2019, there were no building or safety inspections for short-term rentals. So that was added along with the distance buffer.
And so, follow-up question, have we had has there been any other confusion? I mean, collected lodging, the word collected is
this is the
Is
first
it-
appeal we've had since 2019 on this
since
specific.
2019 on that word. Okay. And then I guess this is
That's comforting.
was December 9th, right? With that, I mean, that was a very specific email when we're going through the
There,
emails.
if you, I guess I would direct the commission to attachment A, in your packet. There is a series of emails,
Right.
with language highlighted.
But the one you talked
the email
about was
that had
the-
been discussed was a December 9th,
Right.
email.
Okay. Um, and from my perspective, I know it there, you know, there's lots of how you could look at it, but for us, I think from my perspective, it boils down to the code of how do we look at the code. The code is for us, it's kind of how it boils down to the code. And how we think the code says right or wrong. That's my take. So Commissioner Jones.
I do agree with some of the other commissioners that the language is less than ideal. But I think that the city's response has been consistent across the different applications. And I would argue that the language in this December 9th email matched a lot of the other language, saying that the requirement of renewing the permit is that you have rented and remitted some amount of sales tax to the city. And there doesn't appear to be any follow-up to that email. And so I guess I don't think that the city has been unfair in its application of the law or of the code. Though I do share in the eye roll around
Okay.
ambiguity.
Thank you, Commissioner Jones. Other comments? Okay, so I think now we'll vote on. Are we voting on?
The motion was to uphold the staff.
Motion was to uphold. Okay, so we're voting to uphold the emotion, the staff denial. Any other words I need to say on that before we vote? Is that good enough? Okay, it looks like the upholding the staff denial passed 4-2. Okay.
All right.
Thank you all very much for your time and your effort. And we'll now move on to the next item.
What does that mean? They feel passed?
The result was that the motion was to uphold the staff's position. Sorry, it gets kind of confusing with it was an approval of a denial.
Okay. Everybody ready to move on? Okay, the next item we have on the
Chair,
agenda.
do you want to give them just a minute? I think you got a lot of people
Okay.
that are going to be leaving as well.
Now we'll just let, do we need to take a 5-minute break? Is everybody good? Okay, the next item is CDA 49/2026 Code Amendment, Short-Term Rental and Accessory Tourist Rental. And I think the applicant is the city. Get all my papers here. Emery.
Okay, I will be sharing my screen. Okay, so this item is a code amendment on the topic which we were just discussing. It's specifically related to the code language on lodging taxes and eligibility to renew. And so we're looking at this for both the accessory tourist rental permit and the short-term rental permit. So again, Planning and Zoning Commission's role with the code amendment is to provide a recommendation, as City Council is the deciding body on any code amendment. So again, it's your chance to review it, add additional language, recommend denial, work through those. So again, the intent is to clarify requirements for permit holders. As we've seen, we've had this regulation since 2019. We've now had an appeal. And so I think in recognition of some of the comments that you made, some of the public made, maybe there is room that this could be more clear. So that's what the intent. I would look at the language that we've included as basically a starting point. If Planning and Zoning Commission, so like the one woman that read the example from Aspen, we could have more language being very specific. So that's what we're looking at. And then again, just kind of, have a calendar up here. Again, that's the time frame of our current permit period. And so whatever would get passed as far as new language, this is when it would apply. Is this 2026, 2027 permit period. Again, so this is the section for accessory tourist rentals. So the existing language is in black text. The proposed potential code amendment is in red and underlined. So starting with permit holder who fails to utilize and collect more than $0 in lodging taxes shall not be permitted to renew the permit for the next 2-year cycle. And then likewise, the same language in the section on short-term rental permit. So again, criteria for code amendments, and we do have another code amendment item after this. So this is the criteria we'll be looking at for the rest of the night. So one, that it's consistent with the comprehensive plan and other policies. It doesn't conflict with any other parts of code. It's necessary to address a demonstrated need. And the proposed amendment is necessary to respond to changes in conditions or policy. And then 5, it's consistent with the general purpose and intent of the code. So again, we've heard a lot of the different points of view on this piece of code tonight. And it is consistent with the comprehensive plan, as we do have it in there to periodically review the short-term rental policy to determine the impact of the local housing market. And I would say too, this is a code amendment talking about that section. So if we want to talk about any other aspect of it, this would be an appropriate time for that. 2, it doesn't conflict with anything else in code. Again, it's a clarification. Again, necessary to address a demonstrated need. It appears that there is some lack of clarity as evidenced by that previous appeal. And then necessary to respond to changes. Again, just for that clarification bit. And then consistent with general purpose and intent. We do have short-term rental permits. We regulate short-term stays. This is just further amending code as community needs. So for this particular one, no public comment has been received. If anyone in the public wishes to comment tonight, they can do that following staff presentation. So again, staff recommends approval of this code amendment with the findings on pages 5 and 6 of the staff report. And the next step, again, would go on to council. Planning and Zoning Commission can recommend denial. You can also add additional findings or conditions. Or if you would like to continue the item in order to gather additional information necessary for a decision, it can be continued to their next regular meeting. So that's what's the item for this one.
Okay, thanks, Emery. Yeah, I think we had some public input. Okay, so questions for Emery? Commissioner Corcoran.
I guess we're just going to leave it open at a minimum amount. I mean, it sounds like squatters who are going to sit on these permits just have to rent it out for a long weekend and they meet that criteria, correct?
Yeah, and the thing is when this was put in, and so I would say too, so I work with all the different permit holders, like personally talk to them a lot. We have a wide variety of people. We have some people that they will find a house, they'll purchase it, they'll use it solely for short-term rentals, they don't live here. We have people that, it's like the old family home, they still have it in the family, they rent it out for 3 months, someone comes and stays. And then we have people that, they go on a week vacation once a year, they rent it out, that's it, they live in it the rest of the time. So really the reason why we didn't set any thresholds is to make it available for that wide variety of people. I mean, if we said, okay, you need to rent it out 30 nights a year. Well, if you're living in your house, you got to leave for 30 nights a year. So the intent is we keep it on that side of the, threshold at a lower end to make it, less restrictive.
Thank you.
I would just, because I work in a lot of different jurisdictions, there is a lot of variety on this. For example, Crested Butte has a minimum for a full rental license like this, a minimum of 60 nights a year. And have a maximum number on a similar license like we have here with the renting out a room or something like that, that you can only do a maximum of 90 days. So communities take different approaches to it depending on their philosophy around why you have short-term rentals and whether that's supposed to be a component of the lodging industry, your mix of lodging types for a tourist community or not. So it's something you guys can think about.
Commissioner Connerton.
It's so for just that one paragraph back there, the permit holder who fails to utilize and collect more than 0 in. That's so the red is what you're suggesting to be added.
Correct.
And you don't want to use the word rent in there somewhere? Just curious. Utilize. Okay, well,
Yeah.
that's one of Bloom's taxonomies. Utilize. I don't know. I'm just, do you want to be more specific? Do we want a more specific thing said in there? I don't know.
It says more, if it says more than $0 in lodging taxes.
Yeah.
So that means you have to rent.
Utilizing a rental.
Yeah, so you have to use it. Okay, so just checking. And on the 250 buffer system, I remember that was when I first started here. I think it was during COVID. And wasn't it, there was no buffer?
For 2019, there was no buffer.
Yeah, okay, that's what I remember. I remember that being a very robust conversation about
Yes.
putting 250 feet in the buffer system. So I just want to put that out there because I remember all that. And then that's it. I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Other comments? Commissioner Corcoran.
Kind of just curious, how much tax do we collect on a yearly basis from the short-term rentals?
Yeah, so on a yearly basis, short-term rentals like the last year, it was about $450,000 in accommodation taxes. And that's actually about 13% of what the city collects citywide. So hotels, motels, lodging is like 2.5 million. And then short-term rentals are like 450,000.
And I'm pretty sure about, but the hotels have not complained about the STRs, correct?
Generally they're different models. I mean, a lot of times if you think of a stay that's a short-term rental, you have more guests that want to all be in the same place. I'm going to kind of speak of personal experience.
Yep.
Like sometimes I want to stay in a hotel. It's just me. It's a larger group. And so I think there's enough, and also too, just distinction in the lodging market and hotels in Glenwood. We do have a lot of different stays.
No pushback though, right?
So, I mean, granted it's competition.
Yeah.
Hotels.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest place that you will hear hotels complain about the short-term lodging industry is that they pay residential taxes. They don't pay commercial property taxes. And that's kind of a discussion that we have every year with the legislature around how those get classified. That's typically what you hear is the biggest complaint.
Thank you.
Commissioner Guyman.
I thought when we had this appeal about 10 minutes ago, we thought that it was clear, like the code, you put the code up there and it was very clear. So I guess two things. One is, why are we clarifying it if it was clear? And two, doesn't she have the ability to now go to city council? And if we're changing it because we don't think it's clear, isn't that just going to muddy the waters more?
I think two things. One, anytime we have an appeal like this, we're probably going to take a look at the code and see, see if we can do it a little bit better, right? You can always try to refine things. I think that's really what this is about. This will not go in front of council until they have heard that appeal. right? So we, in the same way that it was the second thing on your agenda, they won't see this text amendment ahead of an appeal over the last language. And I have no idea what council would do with that appeal, honestly. So they're going to have to look at it just like you as what the language is today.
Yeah, I think it could be better too.
I have to say, having done 30 years of code drafting, it can always be better. Everything we draft, I'll be really honest.
Was that an opinion?
No,
Do you feel that way?
that was an acknowledgement. That was
An
That was an
acknowledgement
acknowledgement that it is a
of years of
complicated process
experience.
to write a code, any code. And, we refine things, a defensible code, and you refine it all the time. You guys look at code text amendments probably 10 times a year.
Yeah.
Started.
Okay, I've got a couple things that are in. I mean, I think the new verbiage, that works for me. It says utilize, and I think maybe the words stronger, like rent, and those are good words. Everyone knows what that is.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's a good word. But more than $0 is, that's more than $0. That one's pretty darn clear, if you ask me. The one thought I have is of something we just kind of saw was so it's a fixed period. It's a fixed 2-year period, and I don't know if I just toss this out there, and maybe this isn't for conversation later after we get it in, but should it be more like, if you come in the last 6 months, is there a rolling 1 year, or and maybe it's not 6 months, maybe it's the last 3 months, but you have a rolling 6-month time to do that, and then after that, then you fall into the fixed calendar thing. It doesn't seem like it'd be that difficult to track it. But that, I think the new language helps any type of ambiguity to all go away. That's what I think. But the rolling
Yeah, I think
kind of thing and maybe it's just for the, for the ending time you come in.
Well, I guess what I would say is the counter to that is that that the time period, it's a clear calendar, when permits are available, what the deadline is. And so, if you're making a business choice, if you're making I'm going to block the next applicant from getting in choice.
I get that.
You're making that choice. You could have waited until January 1 to pick up that permit. We haven't hit the cap. The 250-foot rule is a real thing, and it does affect decision-making, right? So from a simplicity of administration standpoint, I think staff, I'm going to guess, would tell you that there's a deadline. They start renewals in September, those close in December. Whatever's available after that is open and available to the public starting in January. It's a pretty straightforward process.
No, I get that. I just think maybe it's a 3-month thing. And I'm good with the 250 foot. I think the max is good. And the percentage, I think all of that's good. And now I guess I'm throwing opinion out versus a comment, but I'll just I do kind of like the rolling, and maybe it's 3 months, maybe it's something like that. But anyway. Okay. Commissioner Connerton.
Thank you for your opinion. Can we, do we have to stick with utilize?
I think we know
We're happy to take.
I think we had a general consensus.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we can add that word. Thank you.
And collect.
Stop it.
Commissioner Guyman.
Do the applicants have to be business owners, or could they just be citizens of our city?
Property owners.
Yeah, property owners.
Yeah, of the space being rented.
I just really think that there should be some grace period for either, we learned from this application, she had 2.5 months to figure it out, and she is not a business owner. She's a regular person. And medical issues too. I just feel like if this is for business people, yes, then it should probably be very strict because you have all your people to help you. But if it's citizens, there are they're our neighbors and our citizens, like, too. I feel like there should be some sort of grace period, some sort of, I don't know.
I would just say that
I shouldn't say I feel. There should be my objective.
be very reluctant to make policy decisions based on this case. There were months and months and months of work with that applicant to establish their permit, to get proper building requirements in place. And then there were significant amount of times and gaps between hearing from that person to address the issues that staff also identified. So the process has worked very well to date, and that's not an example I would use to make policy.
And
That's my opinion.
Is that how you feel?
Those are my feelings.
Yeah, I would just follow that up with just, as you're thinking about the decisions you're making, you know, I always encourage not to draft for the exception, if you will, in terms of kind of grace, you know, any of those things based on one situation. Now, if we had 10 of those, and you'll hear us talk about this, like when you have variances, if we consistently have a variance request for a particular piece of the code, that's probably a pretty good indication that piece of code needs some revision. If we don't run into that issue on a regular basis, it's typically not something that we recommend that you change the code around.
Okay.
And I would also add too, when you have a consistent expiration date for all the permits, that's a clear expectation and understanding in the community. If we had rolling periods for every individual application, every single permit, all 119 would all have different expiration dates. And so if you were a citizen trying to figure out, well, when does this expire? You'd have to contact staff. You'd have to ask specifically, go on the website. But if it's known, all short-term rental permits expire December 31st, 2027. It's clear, it's consistent, it's understood, which has been some of the focus of tonight of making things consistently clear.
Okay, thank you for your opinion, Emery.
I mean, I
Okay.
would point out this is legislative, so it
Yeah.
kind of
No, I know,
all
I
about
know.
your opinions.
But we have right.
criteria.
No, we're not. Yeah, exactly. We'll keep down this track here for a second. Commissioner Jones.
Thank you. I was just going to say, I think I see a lot of freedom in this. I think it's hard to differentiate between business owners and residents because the code's not supposed to take into account people's personal situations in that moment. They're supposed to make a proper decision based on where they are in their life. And it seems like life had different plans for this particular applicant. And I feel for that, of course. And I was also going to make the point that Emery was just making, that I think the decision point is also freedom, because we all know that at this point, these permits are available and we're not having to do like a Cora request to understand whose 250-foot thing is going to expire. And if I'm an investor looking to buy a house, yeah, that's going to be inconvenient. But even if I'm just a person living in my house who's thinking about it, that adds a whole nother layer to it. I also think that the lodging tax of anything allows, like Emery outlined, a wide range of freedoms for use of that space that I think are good for what we want to see here. We want to see full vacation rentals. We also want to see, our snowbirds and everything in between have choices. Yeah, that's how I feel.
So thank you, Commissioner Jones. So let me, and I'll go with what John says before I focus you. So if we're done with factoid questions for Emery, maybe you have a factoid question?
Well, I just want a clarifying one,
Okay,
maybe.
Commissioner Connerton.
Just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. Is anywhere in this criteria, I should say, is there language, because I didn't see that language, saying that somebody could not intentionally block another permit application? No,
They just have to do this.
I know, but
Yeah, everyone
that's
is.
true, but okay, that's,
I mean, Emery talked about that.
okay.
I see what you're asking is.
Yeah,
thank you. The thing is, it's, you apply, you get your permit, you have your permit period. At the end of that permit period, you have to renew, and those are what you have to do those. So, whether you got your permit and you rented it one night and you remitted one night of lodging tax for $5 because you booked it for $50 a night, or you do it every single night of the year, like that's again, to be had. that
Once in 2 years.
flexibility.
So I mean, so once in 2 years, that's how
Correct.
this is. You remember?
Yeah.
that? 1 night in 2 years.
Nope, it's not less than 2 years. It's
Well,
in your
once,
permit cycle.
once in the permit cycle, correct. Well, could be what, I mean, okay, we're good. Okay,
You're up.
thanks. Thanks, Emery. Okay, comments from the public. Come forward and state your name, please.
My name is James McGuire. I'd just like to say, it's really difficult already to get a short-term rental in Glenwood Springs. I don't know if you've looked at the map, but City of Glenwood Springs provides a really nice map that shows the 250-foot buffer. So if you look at the City of Glenwood, it's mostly green, which means you can't get a permit there. So besides that, there's also HOAs. So if there's an HOA and the HOA doesn't allow STRs, then you can't go in in that neighborhood to run an STR. So I think in considering this proposed amendment, and you should consider structuring the language so that it doesn't stifle the spirit of the short-term rental regulations, which is it's also to allow short-term rentals to happen. And I don't think it should be allowed to let people weaponize it, as what happened here in the appeal meeting, to shut down individuals or businesses with genuine intentions to run a short-term rental according to the law and rules of the city, and to promote tourism and business and be a part of that $475,000 number that was put out, that Emery said, for the lodging tax. So I would just ask that you take that into consideration and try to eliminate the ability for people to weaponize using a permit to shut people who want to do it genuinely with good intentions and the right intentions out. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, James. Other comments from the public? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Now we can get to our feelings here. So I need a motion on this application. Commissioner Connerton,
So I move to recommend approval of planning file CDA 000049 2026 to City Council, incorporating staff findings because the application meets the approval criteria for a code amendment with suggested findings 1 through 5, and also with the language change of removing the word utilize and adding the word rent. So all done.
okay. Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Connerton. Is there a second? Commissioner Jones.
I will second.
Okay, Commissioner Jones seconded. Okay, conversation. Commissioner Houghton.
Now that we're on to discussion, finally, at long last. Yeah, I can talk about my feelings at last. I would maybe propose changing that penalty from 2 years to 1 year, perhaps. Just throwing it out there, wild card. I feel like that gives other applicants plenty of time to submit a complete application. And if you are in a situation where you ran up against the clock, you're out for 1 of the 2 years of that 2-year cycle. Rather than saying you have to wait the full 2-year cycle to resubmit a new application. Again, the map's full, so I don't know how much that will do, but just an idea.
So you're saying to
Reduce the
change it from a
penalty.
2-year Or just the penalty?
Yeah, reduce the penalty from a 2-year
To a 1
ban
year.
to a 1-year ban
Okay.
from renewing or applying for a new license or permit.
Okay. But then you still have to meet all the other criteria, 250 feet, all that other stuff.
And within that year of that
Right.
subsequent 2-year period, you would have to collect
Right.
lodging tax.
Right. Okay. Commissioner Connerton?
I would like to revise my amendment. No, can I revise it and add that language? I mean, I don't, if we want to discuss further.
I think let's discuss further.
Okay,
And then, because he'll have to,
yeah,
hold on a second.
I do agree with that. I like that. I think that, that also kind of offers a little bit more maybe to the situation we had here tonight, not that, and the penalty for being 1 year, even though it's probably, not going to offer a lot to a lot of other people. But Emery, what do you think about adding it as 1 year?
So at the function, I get the idea of that having less of a penalty for not doing it.
Yeah.
Probably the way that's going to function though, is it probably wouldn't change that much, because a lot of times what you'll see, and I think the examples of the other 3 that didn't get renewed are good examples. All 3 of those, nobody else in their neighborhood was trying to get a permit. So actually all 3 of them right now could still apply for one. So they weren't able to renew one. They could have turned around on January 1st and submitted a new one. So even if you reduced it to just 1 year,
Right.
it kind of doesn't help them out in any way.
It's renew versus apply. So
Correct,
that makes,
yeah.
okay.
Because in all likelihood, like if there was someone else in the neighborhood and they weren't able to renew,
Yeah,
someone else would get one, and then that property would just be ineligible by the fact they're too close.
okay,
So there probably would be an instance where it could help somebody.
right.
But most of the time it's probably either going to be you didn't get to renew, you just turn around and submit a new application because no one else does, or someone else is going to, even if you were in that 1 year and you weren't allowed to.
And I'll say just one last thing, because I know you got to pass it on to those guys down there, but I do like the comment about it might behoove us to think a little deeper about people who do try to use it as a mechanism for not allowing anyone in the neighborhood to, I mean, I know now, because that's a 2-year block, basically. If somebody holds on to it, if let's say for 2 years, then they don't get any sort of sales tax or whatever, and then all of a sudden it would be revoked, right? But still, that's still kind of preventing somebody.
I mean, essentially, we do have basically it's a use it or lose it policy. If you don't use it in your permit period and you didn't collect taxes, then you don't get to renew.
But you could use it just 1 day.
Yeah.
Back to
Okay.
James's thing. Okay. Commissioner Houghton.
What about you can't apply for a year? Can't renew or apply for 1 year.
I think that my opinion would be that you would be restrictive. So if someone, like in this exact instance, they got their permit and had life situations happen to them and they didn't do it, then they're going to get penalized. And I will tell them, sorry, you didn't collect taxes and now you can't apply for a whole nother year, even though you're eligible. No one else in your neighborhood.
Yeah.
So if
But that
that's,
would allow a time period for. Okay, understood.
I mean, I think the way I would read this is okay. And like in this case, it's 2024, 2025. I didn't collect taxes. I can't renew for 2026, 2027. There's nothing barring me in 2028 if I'm eligible to get a permit. So.
There's nothing barring you from doing it next.
Right. I'll also renew. I think that was the key word.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that when you're thinking about this, it is about just renewing that license, which gives you preferential treatment. You're entitled, I wouldn't say entitled, but you have your first shot at it if you can renew your license before those go out to the general public.
Right.
And so what you're prohibited from doing is simply renewing. If nobody else, you're now just in the general public pool January 1st of the next permit cycle.
And it's so I've had someone that happened, they didn't get there, this was a couple years ago, they didn't do their taxes It didn't get renewed. They turned around and applied again. They came in as a new applicant, so they had to pay $600 instead of $400. They also had to do the public notice again. So keyword would be renew.
And I'll just reiterate, the process is working pretty good as is. We haven't had too many issues with this implementation of this program since 2019.
And I think Cindy had, like, whether you agree with her or not, I think she was well within her rights to apply for the permit. I don't think she did anything wrong. And I do think it was very vague, and I still think it's really vague. I do think that it should say rent for at least one night and collect more than $0 in lodging taxes. I just think it's rent. I don't know. I just still think it's really vague.
Okay.
I think that's a reasonable add-on if the, you know, if the criteria is one night. But which is a little bit why I raised, like, various communities have various ways of saying that, from the one night to, you know, 60 nights to hold your permit. So
I think that if an average citizen, not a business person, were to read it, and it would say very specifically, you have to rent your house out at least one night in your permit period and collect more than $0, then that would have, I don't think we would be here tonight for 2 hours talking about short-term rentals. That's how I feel.
Okay. One thing I've kind of struggled with a little bit is the 1 day in 2 years. I have it's a short-term rental. I mean, I kind of agree with one of the public comments, and you kind of talked about that with other municipalities. But the problem is with our fixed 2-year period, if you apply it, you know, in September or October, November, and you had 90 days, you couldn't do it. So that means you couldn't apply because it's a fixed period. And I don't know what the other municipalities that have, you know, more of a time, because I mean, to me, if you're trying to do a short-term rental, I mean, and you're saying you're doing a short-term rental, one night is not that's a stoppage thing from my perspective to it, that says no one within 250 feet. I do this one night. In 1 year, I have my cousin Louis come out here. I mean, whatever. I mean, you have someone just stay there and you turn it in and you have that. I mean, it seems like if you're calling it a short-term rental, it's a short-term rental, you know, and so I struggle with the 1 day, and I don't know what the logistics are for that because of our fixed time period. You know, I mean, so I don't know what that is, but you know, I know this, all we're doing is, I mean, we're approving, but it's going to council. And I think there needs to be more conversation of what really is a short-term rental, and the same with the accessory one. Otherwise, why are you having it?
right. And I was just gonna say, I think that would be great. You know, I know council will read the record from tonight as
Maybe.
well.
Often feelings.
I have a feeling that they might read it. But I do think that regardless of if you wanted to add something to that, or frankly, if you wanted to continue it over and have more discussion and have staff bring back, which would be totally fine. I mean, we're not there again, the program is working the way it is. Have us come back with some language around maybe an option to look at, or a couple of options that are increased numbers of nights, like kind of focusing in on what is a short-term rental. You know, and maybe that's you prorate depending on the time of the year, you know, during the licensing period. I can see a number of places like that.
Right.
Totally okay. We're not in a rush here. We don't
Right.
have to push this forward tonight. And I do think that those are really important policy questions to kind of wrestle with. And I think that they're ones that I think your council would appreciate you giving the time, rather than just saying, hey, here's a check, you know, like, you might want to think about this too. I think they would appreciate, you know, more fully vetting that idea, if it's something of interest to all of you, to talk about that at another meeting and have us come back with some more proposed language to tinker around with.
You know, it would be interesting to hear. I mean, as you mentioned, other municipalities, maybe the proration is the way to, that's a simple thing. And I don't know, but and I don't think we need to talk about what that is. And maybe that's a continuing thing, or anyway, that's one of my, that's probably the biggest thing that I have with it. And I guess one other quick question I have is the GID the 250 feet?
No, it's
I didn't
also
think
a
so.
higher percentage, right?
Yeah, so GID, so that's where it is a total cap, and it's 15% of free market units in the GID. And it used to be 18, and then actually it got changed.
We did that in the last couple, we did that in our,
So how that pans out is there's 28 available permits in the GID, and there's 28 existing. So
so
GID
there's
is not
28, so the GID is pegged.
correct.
Okay. Does everyone know what the GID is? Yeah. Why don't you explain what the GID is?
Shoot, I should have a map. It's called General Improvement District. It's basically a area in the downtown, and it's used, it's a taxing district, but then it's also used in development code as a geographic boundary for different things. So
Yeah.
get a map, thanks.
Good or bad? Commissioner Houghton.
Do applications expire every 2 years or only permits? If I submit a complete application in November of an odd year, does that application expire? Or is my spot reserved into the next cycle?
So if you submitted in, let's say, November of 2025, your application, you have 6 months to continue it, or to finish it, excuse me.
But that would still reserve, I guess what I'm.
Because you haven't received it. So if you apply in November and you get everything done December 1st, you do have that month to finish your things. But again, when you submit an application, you take an ability from everyone else in your neighborhood to get one. So if you aren't prepared to really use your permit, you can always wait. So that's where, like, yes, I recognize that is a short period of time, but by you submitting a permit, you are taking an opportunity away from others. So
I guess what I'm getting at is if I submit an application in November of an expiration year, I don't have to pull that permit that year. I have 6 months to pull that permit.
you have 6 months to finish, correct?
So I could slow walk my application into the next cycle.
Correct.
So to me, it's not really a problem.
No.
You submit it, you reserve your spot, you've got your 250-foot buffer for the 6 months plus 6 months if Trent so chooses. And then
Yeah.
you pull your permit in the next cycle.
So once you've submitted, you're in the queue and no one else can
So
jump in front of you in the queue.
So for example, using the previous item, they submitted in April, they finished their application in October. And then they were issued in October, so then they had to renew, so.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Connerton. What? No, I think, do you have any comments? We're not, we're commenting now. We're
Oh,
not.
no.
Are you finished commenting?
I think the question I had is, do you want to go ahead and push this up to council, or do you guys want to have more conversations around Pete's commissioner or the chairman's questions around how many nights, all that kind of thing? What does it mean to be a short-term rental? If you want to have that conversation, or do you want to just push this language to council and be done?
I'll kind of throw my 2 bits out since I brought it up. I'll throw it up first and then other people can pop in there, but I think 1 day to me is not the intent of what it should be when you say a short-term rental. That means, and I mean, Emery you talked about it very well, Emery, of here's the different people that you have, from people that use it 100%, that's what it is, and I know people that do what you said, they're gone for 3 months and they do that sort of thing. And I don't know what that time is, but 1 day in 2 years, I personally, I struggle with that.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay, Commissioner Connerton.
okay, I totally agree. I think it might be helpful to have some language suggestions for us to push forward. I don't think we can make this decision sitting here right now. I agree with our chair that 1 day, 1 night does not a short-term rental make. So I would be in favor of getting more language that we could suggest to council.
Commissioner Houghton.
Yeah, I think it definitely warrants further discussion, whether that's continuing this item or a future amendment. I don't know what procedurally is easier for staff, but one or the other.
I think as Carl mentioned, a continuation is perfectly fine. We can bring some language back and
Yeah.
have you consider it.
Withdraw your motion in the second, and somebody move to continue the item.
And then maybe just a recap of like, so I think we have the minimum number of nights, maybe proration of fees, and if there's anything else, just maybe highlight those. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so from what Emery just said, are those the main things, is the number of nights? And I think your verbiage was, I mean, all of that, it's pretty straightforward to me, it seemed like, other than, but I don't know. But do other people have input for him of what they'd like to see if he continues it?
I mean, I still would like to see something, I can't think of any language right now off the top of my head about, I don't know, blocking other people. I don't know, like, I don't know how you can prove intent, Carl, but
Yeah, and I
it
think we
would be
want to, I
tough.
think how we handle that, and that's something we can bring back and talk about, but how we would really handle that is by the minimum number of nights, right?
Yeah.
And I
that's
think
what
that,
mean.
you know,
might be
we all
good.
know a couple of people in the industry. I think we can pull some stats from their side.
Right.
Because they have access to information that we don't, regarding, you know, what's the average number of nights? I mean, it's lower than what you would think, I think, in
Right.
Glenwood. But to try to find some information around like what does it mean to be doing this on a regular basis, and maybe even talking to some of those, you know, there again, we all know people who are in the industry, talking to them about kind of what are their clients, you know, that mix that Emery was talking about, what does that look like, and how many nights are those kinds of people actually renting for, so that we can narrow down to somebody who is not just blocking, but, you know, what's the range on, yeah, I rent it out over Christmas because I go to, you know, that's when the family does a vacation and that's kind of how I help pay for it. To, yeah, I am a teacher and I'm gone 60 days every summer because I work in Alaska and I rent it out every summer, right? Like I think those are some of the questions we don't really have answers to, but I think that's how we get at that issue of intent.
Yeah, I think that's excellent. So, I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay, Commissioner Connerton is withdrawn. Would we withdraw the second? Was that Commissioner Jones? You're down here somewhere. There you are.
I withdraw my second.
Okay, so it's withdrawn, and to just give direction to Emery, I think let's just go around and make sure we're good. So
Yeah, I was
Commissioner,
gonna say, I'd be curious to see if there are any jurisdictions that have different requirements for local occupancy. If there's any, you know,
That's good.
two-tiered system based on local occupancy. And I guess also the feasibility of enforcement on that, but that seems like potentially an avenue worth exploring here.
Commissioner Guyman.
I also wanted to know if there's anything that the city could do then to also collect data about statistics with people who do short-term rental, because I don't know what Cindy and her family are afraid of. But they must be afraid of crime, or, I mean, she was talking about not wanting your children outside. So I don't know if there's any like national statistics about short-term rentals and increased crime, or, I mean, incidental occurrences of short-term. I mean, usually it's just families coming to vacation in Glenwood Springs.
So that's like a bigger, that's questioning the whole short-term rental thing.
I just
Is what you're saying.
You know, sometimes
No, I get what
like-
you're asking.
Like,
Right.
like how the city sometimes does some not advertising, because that wouldn't be, but like outreach about, they're not gonna murder people and they're not gonna kidnap your children. This is other families, and I use short-term rental, so I'm totally not against, I bring my family to places. So I do think that there's this stigma still in our community that if you have a short-term rental, that things can happen.
Part of the renewal process is we pull reports from the police department for every single short-term rental and review them to make sure there's not any outstanding issues. The police department with that sort of thing, like just the police reports.
That's good.
Okay.
Commissioner Corcoran.
Yeah, mine would be real quick. Instead of using minimum day requirements, how about we give them a financial tax incentive to get to someplace? Say like you have to collect X amount of taxes or that you forfeit the permit. So that eliminates anybody just squatting on it and things like that, kind of say, hey, if you're renting it, you have to generate this much. Or a minimum amount to keep the permit instead of days.
I am concerned about stipulations similar to that, in terms of if there's economic downturn and there's, reduction in tourism in the city. So it will certainly complicate the renewal process in terms of the collecting of data that we require at that time period. But, in terms of number of days, we'll try to show you some best practices from other communities and how they manage that.
One other question I have is sometimes you have to watch out what you ask for. And so I guess my question is, as you talked about what we have out there already, it would be interesting to see some sort of graph that says here's for our existing people that we have, as you kind of went through the examples of some people do 1 day, some people do, what's the, and maybe it's a bar graph, it's something though that shows, if we put something in, what is there a sweet spot? Is there something that's an issue that, holy crap, now we're going to have a filled up room of people all mad at Commissioner Connerton or something. But I mean, it would be good to have that data so we kind of know here's what our community, how they're using these short-term rentals. Yeah. Mhm. Right. Okay. Any other input to
I rescinded it.
Emery?
We need to vote.
Do we need to vote on the risk?
Yes, be
Okay.
great if you could offer a motion to continue it to the
Okay.
July 28th meeting.
Okay, so do I need to make a okay. Commissioner Guyman,
Move to continue this item to the July 28th meeting.
do we need a second?
I second that motion. Sorry.
Okay, Commissioner Corcoran
I
seconded the motion.
Second that motion.
Okay, and we can just do let's just do a hand vote here. All in favor? Aye. Okay, it passed unanimously. Okay, thank you very much, Emery. That was good. That was good conversation. Okay, where am I? Okay, the next one is, real exciting. The CDA 050-2026 code amendment, electric vehicle charging stations. And I think, is Emery, you're on again? This is your night, Emery.
Emery's pushing a lot of stuff through right now. He's getting married beginning in July, so somebody taking a little bit of time off.
July, basically. So this is it.
Oh, wait, aren't you working the day of the wedding? Like, there's an expectation. I'm sorry, not one of my associates. I get confused.
He's an optimist. That's so sweet.
This is another code amendment. I will be sharing my screen, and this is all about electric vehicles. So this will be similar criteria as the last item. So again, potential changes to Article 70, various sections. And again, it's the recommendation for council, either approval, denial, additional conditions. And so the reason we're here is staff has recognized that the city of Glenwood Springs right now, we do have we lack really specific guidance and regulations for electric vehicles. As it's becoming a growing part of the market and we see a lot more of them, we have a lot more interest in charging stations in the city of Glenwood Springs. And so this is an example of one in Glenwood Meadows. Recently, Planning and Zoning Commission approved a special use permit for Tesla, and we processed that as parking as a primary use, which it's similar to a charging station, but it's not quite the same. And so we're looking at adding very specific use categories and then regulations that involve those. Just so it's, developers that are looking to do it can have a clear expectation. We have a clear way to basically review those applications. And so that's what the intent of these code amendments are. Again, as they continue to grow, so you see, this is Iona, which is a type of charger. We're on the I-70 corridor. So we're going to continue to see interest from these types of companies for this type of service and use. So you can see there's a pretty big gap across Colorado for that particular charging station company. And then in 2020, 2024, state of Colorado, state legislature passed an actual bill requiring any community with more than 10,000 people or county to adopt this model land use code. As of the 2020 census, we were just under 10,000 people, so we didn't have to do this. But what's nice about this is it gives basically a rubric to go from, like a template, if you will, for potential code changes. And so we took this, and I'm going to go through each of the standards. Those standards are from the model code, which again, we don't have to follow, just basically using that as almost like a draft or a jumping off point for what we want to do. So some of them line up, staff is recommending, okay, we adopt that standard. Others we're saying, well, maybe we'll do it our way. So again, we're not required to comply with the state's model land use code. And actually, Carl, I had a question. If our population surpasses 10,000 people, do we have to do this? I never found anything.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, because this is the only community that I work with that is close to the 10,000.
So stay tuned.
Yeah, so stay tuned. I actually have never had to answer that question.
Okay,
Look at
so
it. Because I don't think it speaks to it.
I didn't see it. But anyway, it's a good jumping off point. That's what we're using tonight. So first off, in order to regulate something, you have to define it. And so all I would say too, a lot of this presentation is summary. There's more like the specific definitions and some of it in the staff report. But first you have to define it. And so when you see charging projects, is it a primary use? So it's a property solely dedicated to charging. You just go in and it's a bunch of charging stations. Or is it an accessory use? So is it you pull into a Wendy's and they have 5 charging stations? And so that's one difference that you can make with a definition. And then another important one is your levels of chargers. So your level 1 charger, that's something that, it takes a while. That's what someone would have in a residential garage. You plug it in, leave it overnight, go the next day, drive where you need to go. That level 2 charger, that's a little bit higher power, a little quicker charging time. That's a level 2. And then the level 3, that's the fast charger. You plug in, you're there for 15 minutes, then you leave. So those are the types that you're going to see on the interstate, putting together that network of chargers. So again, you have the 3 levels, which we would now have a definition in code, and that we'd be able to look at different things. So if you just want to have a level 1 in your house, there's really no building permit required. Just go ahead and do it. Versus I'm a company, I want to do 20 level 3 charging stations on the outside of town. That's a different level of charger. So we'd look at it differently. So that's what these definitions are. And again, the model code just says, hey, here's some definitions. You need to adopt them. We're not adopting all the ones they recommend, just the ones we think are most important and clear. The second one of their standards basically just says you can't single out EV uses and create like a whole new land use thing to review it. So we're just going to propose we use our existing land use processes. Some of them will come to you. Some of them would just be administrative. And again, it all depends on size, scale, scope, what kind it is. Then standard number 3, really similar. Just the main point is the state doesn't want communities. They want to try to encourage it, so they don't want people basically rewriting all the regulations in a way that could prohibit it or really restrict it. So we're just using everything we already have, not creating any new like types of applications. And again, so like these first 4 standards are all pretty similar. And just stating, use the processes you have, which we do and we're good with. But then standard number 5, which again, we look at land use and zoning, planning and zoning commission, we look at this a lot. Is the use allowed in this zoning district? So the state basically says, by right use in all land use contexts for accessory and primary. And so staff, what we're proposing is mostly following that. Lower residential zoning districts, it would be a special use permit. So if someone wanted to do like a direct charging station in a residential zoning district, it would come to you all, so maybe that's a single family home that wants to do one, or like a duplex type development. And I think it's worth just to be clear, those direct chargers take an immense amount of electricity and are very, very expensive. So the likelihood that we would see someone applying for a special use permit, not going to rule it out, but it would probably be low. And then again, having it at permitted use and basically all other zones, commercial zones, mixed use, resort, industrial, with the only exception being the M2 zoning district, because that's your downtown zoning district. So we wouldn't, this is basically saying we would not want to see that use in our, walkable, dense downtown, having a whole area dedicated just to charging. And then we have the accessory use. So that would be you have like a primary use on the site, like the Wendy's example. There's a primary use on the site, and then there's chargers there. And so we're recommending just have that be across the board permitted use. So even in the M2 zoning district, we do have some random properties where like they do have a parking area off street. They could put an accessory charging station there as long as there was a primary use on the property. So again, that's a little bit smaller of an impact. So that's what we would be considering. And then number 6 just talks about parking. If you have a charging station, it counts as a parking space. And that's what these next ones are. Talking about if you have a van accessible parking space that is beyond your ADA requirements, it could count for 2. We don't really do that in code. We don't have any situations where you get to double count a parking space. So we just proposed not addressing this one. Standard number 8 just basically says you comply with ADA requirements, which that's already in our code. So we're good there. Number 9, this is about screening. We already have existing screening requirements for things like mechanical equipment. And so here we just recommend a very small text amendment just to include electrical and other utility equipment. And so if you had a site, they're going to have to screen a large transformer in some way. Fence, maybe a little bit of landscaping, just soften how that looks. And then this one just relates to a lot of these charging stations. They're mass manufactured. They come, fresh out of the box, basically from the factory. So some of these things, if someone wanted to use something that had a big bright neon sign on the top, we have sign regulations that would consider that a sign. And the same thing goes for lighting. So anything that we have, we're just going to use as far as lighting and signage when these get installed. This is a standard where this model code encourages not requiring screening, but we're finding that, we have code, we make other people screen things. We think that's an acceptable standard to have. Again, goes into the aesthetic and how a site looks and functions. So we're not going to recommend anything for this one. This is a similar one, which basically just says, electrical equipment has safety clearances. And so it's saying that, a city can't require someone to screen something that would contradict it with a safety requirement, which we do that already anyway. When like if our electric department says we need 3 feet in front of that transformer, we respect that and look for other ways that maybe that screening can be met. So we're basically finding we already do that. This one is again similar, just talking about lighting. Because some of these charging stations have canopies, and we do have some language on lighting of canopies in code. Right now, just for gas stations, we're just adding that primary use, those 2 definitions for those uses in there, just so it's all the same standards, which I think, Planning and Zoning Commission looked at a couple months ago, the light limits. So again, those are, it's kind of all a package. Some of them adhere exactly to that state model code, some of them don't. All the code language was in the packet. And then again, these are the criteria. Comprehensive plan talks about green transportation and incentivizing EV growth and operations. And so having a clear use and regulations just helps with that development. It's also in the energy and climate action plan, adopting policies to expand availability of that charging. Doesn't conflict with anything else in code. It addresses a need for a consistent set of regulations. It's necessary to respond to the growth in electric vehicles. And then it aligns with purpose and intent of the code to just regulate land uses in a way to mitigate the negative impacts. So, which a lot of our existing code and processes already do. So, did not get any public comment on this one. So again, your options are move to recommend approval. This would go on to City Council with any findings and conditions. Again, similar to the last item. If you have any other thoughts or ideas to add, this should be the time. Recommendation for denial, or also to like with the last one, can't continue it. Be the options.
Okay, thanks, Emery. Okay, questions for Emery, Commissioner Houghton.
If you had parking as a principal use in the M2 district, could you then have an accessory EV charging on that parking principal use? And does that effectively make it EV charging as a principal use?
As a special use. Is that right? And that's on an M2?
Here what's, yeah, right there.
Yeah.
But I guess I'm saying I can think of at least one lot that I think is an M2.
Yeah.
Where parking is a principal use. What's the threshold from EV charging as an accessory to a parking principal use and EV charging as the principal use?
Yeah, that was one thing we talked about was at what point does an accessory use, like, let's say you have, again, I like Wendy's, so I'm gonna use it as an example. You have 20 parking spaces and every single one of them is an accessory charger. Is it still a Wendy's or is it a charger lot? So we didn't come down to a number in that distinction. So it's a good one.
Are you thinking of the 9th and Cooper garage
I was thinking.
or any
lot
parking
behind the
garage potentially?
Hotel Denver. There's 2 lots that's between 7th and 8th on Blake that are surface parking. Sorry, the Maxwell Anderson.
You paid but I think that's outside of the M2 zone district. But you made me think of 9th and Cooper.
Yeah.
And I guess, do we care?
No, I think we would certainly want to encourage accessory chargers within a parking garage that the city developed downtown. So it would maybe make sense to make it as an S in that zone district.
And that allows for review. And it could be,
Yeah.
you could find that it doesn't fit the comprehensive plan, whatever reason, but it would allow a path forward. And then, yeah, back to your question, I guess if you had someone doing a parking lot first, and then later, 5 years later, someone wanted to do the charging station, I guess it would be the primary use was parking as by the special use permit.
I mean, it may make sense just to make it consistent with
Yeah.
the parking as a principal use in that zone. Again, these DCFC chargers, these level 3 chargers are usually intended to be a standalone type of situation. So I don't know that anyone would incorporate that into a parking garage, but we would want the opportunity. And the technology on those, like technology on everything else, is likely to improve over time and become less impactful and intrusive. So special consideration by the Planning and Zoning Commission is probably appropriate.
Okay. Commissioner Connerton.
Can you speak to just the screening? Like, but are you talking they have to screen the actual charger? Because it seems like that would just be really like a lot.
No, it would be like the charging equipment. So like if you have a transformer, any other like generator equipment, not the actual charger itself.
I'm just thinking of like Target. I mean, what is screen
Here.
there?
Yeah,
Oh, this is the photo I had. Yeah, so screening.
Oh,
with all
it went
the,
like that. Okay.
associated equipment, the chargers themselves. Now there is some landscaping on this side, which I think a lot of that was kind of pre-existing. But yeah, it'd be for all the other equipment, not the charging stations
see.
themselves. You want to be able to see where those are.
When is that Tesla charging area gonna begin?
So they have submitted a building permit and they don't have approval yet. They're working out some site plans and permit approvals. So I don't really know.
It's also important to note that a special use permit and any staff review of these will be coordinated with our electric utility. We were kind of shocked at what the Iona proposal at the amount of electricity that would utilize as compared to the rest of the city. And I think the number was around, if used at full capacity, was approximately 50% of the amount of electricity generally used by the city. So that is a huge impact to our grid and to our electric utility. So they have to be highly coordinated.
Okay, Commissioner Guyman.
Are all these parking spots on private property?
So let's go to the use table. So for the purposes of these regulations, yes.
Okay.
So all, these are all, well, no, because it would be by zoning district. And so for example, if the city looked to do a charging station, we'd go to the applicable zoning district. So
So how do you enforce I mean, if you're looking for a parking spot and that's the parking spot that's open and you don't have an electric vehicle, how would that be enforced then? Because it's public parking.
In the public right of way, like how would we enforce that it be an electric vehicle that uses that space?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that we would.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Hmm.
But it may
Because
be.
I would park there if I. I just want you to know, like, I would be like,
I see how.
that's my spot too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that in a number of communities have penalties for, you know, like they try to, it's like using a handicap spot. Like unless your car happens to be plugged in, they write you a ticket.
How did they determine what? I know when I worked at CMC, we went around and we put them in all of our campuses, blah, 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 did all this thing. And I forget, but how does it on the map, when you go to the map, and I think, I don't know, maybe there's a bigger map than that for people that are driving cross country, cross state, and they put in, hey, I need to charge my car. So you have the primary ones and then you have the accessory ones.
So I will tell you my personal experience because I have an electric pickup. So it will, if I ask it to find chargers, it will rank them for me on what level charger they are and how close they are. So I can make a determination on, and if they are in use or not in use. So I get all that information.
And yeah, and then people choose whether they want it to be a public one or.
Yeah,
I mean, that's all that this is. This is
Yeah.
all public stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I like the lighting thing, you know, like you get gas at Maverick and starts talking to you and flashing. And so, I mean, you basically said that people can't do that. Was that what you said? And when I read your staff report?
No, it'd be like, we have existing regulations for signs and sign and lighting. So we're just gonna stick with that. Because what the state model code is saying is like, these come out of the box, and however they come out of the box, you can't regulate it. That's just how they are. So the state, that model code is intended to be like very open, and make things very
Open to whatever
easy.
architecture of what's people come out
And
with.
so we're just saying like, no, we would still use our sign code. If something was on there that our code would consider a sign, we're gonna regulate it as such. If that's lighting, we're gonna regulate it as such. So
But
that,
if they're selling you like a sandwich at Target or something,
yeah, no, sorry.
that would be, okay.
This is a giant, video board doing it.
Giant video board. Okay.
Commissioner Houghton, I apologize. Those Maxwell Anderson lots are in the M2 zone district.
Now, so it's are people kind of okay with how this is, and we go on and push it on up? Okay, so then let's, let me go back to the process here. Okay, is there anyone from public that? Mr. Frail? No. Okay, public hearing is closed. Okay, let's bring it back here. Commissioner Houghton.
I move to recommend approval of planning file CDA 0000502026 to City Council, incorporating staff's findings because the application meets the approval criteria for a code amendment with findings and conditions of the staff report, with the amendment of allowing charging as a principal use by special use permit in the M2 zone district. And accessory, was accessory already allowed as a special use permit?
As a principal and accessory use, both in the M2 zone district via special review use. Is that correct?
Yes. What Trent said.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Houghton. Is there a second?
Sorry, can I just clarify something? So M2 on this table right here, this should remain permitted by right use, or you want that to be special use?
And remain by use, remain by use as an accessory use and be allowed under a special use permit
Primary. Got it.
as a principal use.
Got it. Thanks.
Commissioner Corcoran.
I second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Thank you very much, John. Any comments or? Okay, I'll call for voting on this. Okay, looks like this passed unanimously. Good job, Emery. So when do you get married?
Huh?
When do you get married? When's your
July 18th.
July 18th? So is your honeymoon going to be in Glenwood?
No, it's South Director.
Any short-term? John's got.
As I say, this is, we have drifted into questions that you're not.
Exactly. John has a van. It's not very big. Oh yeah, he sold it. Sorry. Okay. Thank you, Emery. Okay, commissioner comments. Commissioner Jones?
I know that a number of other commissions have kind of been talking about e-bikes and regulation around that, and I'm just curious if there'd be any interest in us being involved in that, if other people would like to toss that around. I'd be interested in discussing.
It's not in 070, so we
Yet.
probably won't bring it to you. But you are, as a member of the public, if you want to provide some comment to those other commissions, or when it gets in front of council, we're working on a couple of different versions of an ordinance to address that. So we'd love to have your comments there, but it probably is not going to come to you guys as a body.
Thank you, council.
I think it's wacky. I know we're not supposed to. Okay. Commissioner Corcoran?
Good.
You're good? John?
I'd love to hear from the director during his comments, the discussion on parking minimums, how that went during the work session, and updates if there are any on the LIHTC project, if that's starting next month for the 15th month, or if it's what's going on, if you know.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Guyman.
No, I had one more thing about short-term rentals, Emery. I walk in the morning, I know where the short-term rentals are, and they don't know how to lock their bear cans. And I didn't know if there's a way that we can do some better education. I'm not gonna call law enforcement every time. I'm not called code enforcement. It's all the time. It's not always, it's frequently the short-term rentals. They're not from our area. They don't know. They don't know that they're not supposed to put their trash out, and they don't know how to lock those bear locks. Cause even when they do, I told the guy, I was like, you shouldn't have put that out. He said, oh, they told me to put it out. Then you shouldn't put out, he does have a bear lock. Well, obviously he didn't use the bear lock. But I don't know if there's specific requirement of education of renters that aren't from around here. About
Yeah,
bears.
and we also work with fire department too. That's a big concern, especially this time of year, of informing those people of, hey, this is where you are. These are some risks. So code enforcement is always an option. A lot of times though, this is more of, if you want to just let us know which address, we usually communicate with the owner and explain to them that if you keep doing that, you're gonna get fined, and that the fine's gonna go to you, not your renter.
I feel like if I call every time I see one, they're gonna be like, there's Connie calling again, and they're gonna start blocking my number.
The thing is they can get fines for that. So usually people are pretty, 1 or 2 strikes, paying a couple $100 fines. They get their people knowing how to use the trash cans. So
it's up to me to make sure that people are following.
It's incredibly helpful if we get reports from somebody who, when it is happening, because sometimes the best education, just like with your kids, is a little positive reinforcement and occasionally some, consequences. But if we don't get the call, we can't impose consequences.
Seems like it's a homeowner's responsibility. I mean, that's.
So what's your cell phone, Emery?
Okay. Director comments.
Okay, work backwards, maybe while I'm thinking about these. The goat, the mountain goat, has been issued a CO. We're waiting for them to open. So it's on the owner. New Mexico has opened, and Colorado gets a weekly request email from the city to say these are the things that are outstanding and where are you in the process. So we're trying our best to help these folks get open, but a lot of it's outside of our control. John, to your question about the parking discussion, it was centered at that time around the GID. It may be parking in general, but the ask that I have of this board is if we have a couple members that would like to be a part of kind of a subcommittee of the Transportation Commission and the DDA to engage in those conversations.
John would.
Okay. Does that sound good to everyone? I would like
You're
for
so quiet.
it to not be more than two, because then that's a meeting of this board. So if it's just two, that's perfect.
Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, so good. No, that works if you have of interest. There'll be a little bit of discussion about commercial linkage and some other topics. So it probably be fun conversations. The only other sorry, Canyon Vista. We have still not heard anything. They have not closed on the property. So, we get discouraged the longer that goes on. The only other comment from me is that, again, next month we'll have a variance application. We'll look at STRs again, and I think that is it for next month. But yeah, thank you all.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. We're adjourned.